As I've indicated earlier, the sales agreement between MSP Plastics and Anchor Advanced Products required that I sign a contract to work for Anchor for a period of 3 years. Let me say right up front that was the most difficult 3 years in my total working career. Perhaps some of that was my fault, but and I had some indication ahead of time that it might be a very difficult period because I had to spend that 3 years pretty much watching what I had built over a period of 25 years be undone and go to pot, so to speak. Ultimately, they wound up selling the company to another firm, and then perhaps it changed hands again, but ultimately it was placed into bankruptcy and stopped operation, which was a heartbreaking experience for me to watch. Perhaps was one of the things that inspired me to come back and help Dean and Kay and Sandra take over bankrupt Wade Precision and build something new in Seagrove. I spent that time wondering if I should step forward and tell them they were making a mistake or just let them go ahead. And they pretty much indicated they knew how to run a company and didn't really need any advice from me. They were appreciative when I was able to help them with a particular customer or that sort of thing. But it was not a real happy time for me, and certainly not for the people that I had worked with so long at Midstate. But I got through it, and it didn't ruin my life. Betty and I were in the process of building a new home at Baden Lake. Betty was able to practice her interior design knowledge and decorate it just the way she wanted, and it certainly was a very, very comfortable and nice place to live and to have company and just everything. It was a good community to live in. We lived there from 1997 until 2016. And by 2016, many of the people that we had met when we first arrived at Uruguay Point were aging out, and they were either passing away, moving to a nursing home, or moving to be closer to their children. So our interest in remaining at Uruguay Point decreased some, and we decided that from a financial standpoint we would downsize, and it also gave me an opportunity to be a little bit closer to Seagrove, where I could help Kay and the rest of the people at Sapona Plastics. And then, as most of you probably are aware, through Sapona Plastics, became involved with the Lux facility, and that was for me a very rewarding experience to be able to transform that into a going concern in terms of Sapona Plastics occupying one of the buildings, and then making the old cannery, refurbing it and making it into a wonderful community center that is now really beginning to show evidence that it's bringing the community together and giving some real purpose toward the growth of Seagrove. In the meantime, over the time that we lived at Uruguay Point, traveled pretty extensively. While I was still working in 1996, we went to Alaska, just Betty and I, on a Christian tours with a Christian tours group. Spent a couple of weeks, I think, touring Alaska, flew into Anchorage, did a bus tour of Alaska, flew back out of Seattle back to Charlotte. But we actually covered some of the area of Canada on the way back down to get to Seattle. A wonderful trip. Neither of us had ever been to Alaska, and we were just awestruck at the beauty of the place, so much else. And it was a great group to travel with. They were good people. Some of them became friends. There was a couple that we became somewhat close to that lived in Bakersville, North Carolina, but their daughter lived in Liberty, North Carolina. So they came down to visit her and came by to see us. We found that travels really gave us an opportunity to get to know people all over a large area, and we enjoyed having them visit with us, and we visited with them. We would either have them at our mountain house or at the lake. Either place was usually a joy to have the company. In 1998 or 99, I can't remember for sure which it was, we went with a group up from Asheboro, sponsored by Randolph Bank and Trust, I think, initially, but traveling with a travel agency out of Boston. We went to Australia and New Zealand, and that was just an absolute delight. So many things that we got to see in Australia and in New Zealand. For example, in New Zealand, we flew up in a ski plane up and landed on Glacier in the far southern part of New Zealand. But the whole trip was just a wonderful experience, and most of the time with a really great group of people. So we enjoyed that. In 2001, in fact, just before 9/11, we came back from Russia. We went to Russia for, I think, a 3-week tour of Russia and Scandinavia. We spent most of the time in Russia and St. Petersburg, but we did a fairly extensive tour of the Scandinavian countries. Just saw so many things and got so many experiences. And again, met people that became longer-term friends. We've had a little trouble keeping up with all of them. As you get older, you can't, but it was a great experience. And then in, I think, 2002, we did a road trip. We had a Lincoln Navigator at the time and traveled with Larry and Flo Phillips to the Northwest. We actually went up to the Dakotas and then out to Washington and then back down to through Idaho and to Rushmore. Just a really, really wide-ranging trip to the Northwest. I think we were actually gone 21 days or something, and that was a really great trip, and with some really close friends that also lived at Old North State. The following year, we took a shorter trip. We went to Harper's Ferry, the battlefield at Sharpsburg, and visited some of that area. Actually, one of the things we wanted to see was an island in the Ohio River that was associated with the fellow that shot the guy on the river. Anyway, I'll fill that in. I'll look that up. But we had a great trip there, and then in 2004, we went with a Methodist group, a lot of folks from Albemarle, but a lot of people from the whole greater Charlotte area, and even the Methodist bishop, which was a lady that lived in Charlotte. I think there was about 240 people in the total group. We went on a trip to Italy, went in, flew to Milan, did all of the major cities as we went south, and then crossed into Sicily and visited the original Greek city that's pretty much ruins now, but had, I think, 21 different monuments surrounding a valley. I had been when I was in the Navy, I had gone to Athens and seen the Greek monuments there, but they were all white marble. The difference in Sicily was that they were all tan sandstone. Gave us a whole new perspective on what a Greek temple could look like. But anyway, that was a great trip. Then in 2005, we went to England with Jim and Faye Campbell. That was the first time Jim and Faye had ventured abroad very much, and I think they got the fever. But we had a great time. We started off in London, of course, went from there into Wales up to Ireland and then back across into Scotland. And one of the highlights of the trip was a show called A Military Tattoo in Scotland. And that was quite an experience for us. Just touring around England, both Betty and I had been to England before on at least a partial tour. But Jim and Faye had not, and I think they really enjoyed it a lot. In 2006, I guess, or 7, Ben and I went to a cruise around South America. We flew to Santiago, Chile, got on a boat, and cruised south around the tip of South America, back up to Argentina, and covered a lot of things in between those two. One of the things that happened that was an experience for us, the first day we were in Santiago, they had an earthquake. That was not unusual for Santiago, but it was a wholly new experience for us. So we got to see a lot of what South America was, and Buenos Aires was a real experience, a beautiful city, quite large city, and then we were able to go out into the countryside and see how ranch life was in Argentina. And one of the things that we enjoyed seeing in a couple of different places was penguins were coming onto the shore. Again, that was a great trip for us, one that we enjoyed very much. Ironically, the president of Wingate was on the same trip. I had been in a meeting in Wingate with him a couple of weeks before, and he was saying he was going out of town and going out of country, and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "South America." I asked a few more questions, and I said, "Well, we'll see you when we get on the ship in Santiago," and we did. And that made the trip a little bit more interesting. Jerry had lost his first wife a couple of years before that, and he was still somewhat in a recovery stage. But we had a great time, shared a lot of meals with him, and saw a lot of sights on that trip. And then in 2009, we took a trip to China and Taiwan. Brent and Megan had scheduled an engagement party, something in Taiwan, and we tied that into a tour of China and flew into I'll fill it in. Flew into China on a Sunday afternoon, then began a bus trip and switched from that to a river cruise on the Yance River. Went up into the Three Gorges Reservoir, just a fabulous trip to the western part of China. Saw the panda bears, and a lot of other things. We visited the terracotta soldiers, saw the Great Wall of China. So many things that it's really hard to remember all of them, although somewhere we have a folder with a lot of notes and pictures. But it was a great trip. Then we spent a couple of days in the South China Sea on an island called Hainan Island, which was pretty much purely Chinese. There wasn't any Western type food. We were staying at a beautiful resort that was part of the Marriott Vacation Club facilities that are available. And we then flew from there to Taiwan to attend the engagement party with Megan's family, and then returned to the United States a day or so after that. So it's pretty evident we were having a good time traveling. And then two more that came somewhat later in 2013, we went with Jim and Faye Campbell to Paris and stayed at the Marriott resort area there near Disneyland. But we had good train access to downtown Paris, and we went into Paris almost every day and toured as many things as we could, the Louvre, just a number of things. Actually, I think Jim was probably more familiar with the things that were in Paris than I was. I actually had been in Paris before, but he had such an interest in art and art history that he had a lot of things on his to-do list when we got over there. That turned out to be a great trip. We met a lady there from Alaska and got to know her very well. She's been here visiting with us several times, and I get a constant stream of beautiful pictures from Alaska. She goes all over the world playing golf, and that brings her to Pinehurst every once in a while, so we get a chance to see her. She's been here 2 or 3 times. And then the following year, or maybe 2 years, we went to a small town on the Mediterranean coast in Spain and spent a week. And that gave us an opportunity to go to Gibraltar and then across the Straits of Gibraltar to Morocco. And then we visited several other towns, cities in Spain on day trips. So it was quite an experience, and I think Jim and Bay also enjoyed that. That was the last opportunity we had to travel with them, but they were always our good close friends, and we enjoyed being with them every time. So you see, we have had a pretty enjoyable retirement.